Greetings friends, we're down to the final 2 schools in our Witcher Schools series, and one of them is of course the School of the Griffin. As for the very last one, well, I don't think we need to guess. The School of the Wolf will be our grand finale, closing out the series. But before that, let's talk about a school that often gets caught in the middle. How the School of the Griffin was founded and how its members were trained. After the unity among witches collapsed, there were Witcher schools everywhere. The ones we've talked about in depth in earlier videos, the School of the Bear, the School of the Viper, the School of the Manticore, and the School of the Cat, all believed they were the best in their own way. But to be honest, most of them were just running wild. Sure, there were still some well-meaning witches among them, but many of them had no clue what the original Witcher Creed was even about. Enter the witches who were ready to say, that's not how a real Witcher acts, this is how it's done. These were the witches who would go on to found the School of the Griffin. At their head was the famous Erland of Larvik, who took 13 companions with him and set off toward Kovir and Povis. Their destination was a fortress called Caesarea. Caesarea was built on a cliff where the mountain met the sea, and it had high defensive potential. Years ago, this was one of the places where Altsur and Cosima Malaspina had conducted experiments to create the first Witchers. Things hadn't always gone smoothly for the mages. Some candidates had died, and over time, those unfortunate souls had turned into magical creatures. Before they could even think of founding a school or naming it, the future Griffin Witchers had to defeat these creatures and take the fortress. Once the battle was won, they took a deep breath and said, alright, now we can name ourselves, and they turned to the man who inspired their name. That man was Taliesin, Erland of Larvik's sword trainer. I wasn't sure whether to read his full name or not, it's one of those absurdly complicated ones, but oh well, let's give it a shot. Taliesin Bledin Yorath Eap Llewellyn. Look at that name, he sounds Spanish or something. Anyway, the Witchers called this man Griffin, and in his honor they named the school after him. From the very beginning, the School of the Griffin focused on magical training. Alongside their magic-centered methods, they were known for their adaptability. You could even say they were the wisest of the Witchers. Their initial training was top-notch. Griffin witches were taught etiquette, encouraged to act with purpose, and raised with a strong sense of brotherhood. Elder witches were expected to lead by example. In their school, if a child died during training, unlike the other schools where it was just considered a loss and the child might not even have a marked grave, the Griffin school would hold proper funerals and honor them respectfully. They were truly treated with dignity. At the height of their power, the School of the Griffin was highly respected. Kingdoms did all they could to have them at their side, but the Griffin witches, faithful to the true Witcher code, rejected such offers without hesitation. If a Witcher were to stray from his path, there'd be no going back. Your politics are your concern. Our path is our own, they said, and stayed true to that until the end. There was, however, one key difference between them and the other schools. Most witchers, especially those from the School of the Wolf, are quite sensitive when it comes to killing dragons, but the School of the Griffin was home to some of the most famous dragon slayers. How they came to embrace the idea of punching a dragon square in the face, I have no clue. The fortress of Caesarea was basically an ocean of books. Every mage and scholar who valued science and magic knew of the immense knowledge stored there and tried to collaborate with the Griffin witchers. One of the most famous books from their collection was the Book of Shadows. We'll talk about why this book is so famous in a moment. With such vast knowledge and respect, the spotlight naturally fell on the Griffin Witchers. But as they continued to refuse alliances and held their ground, sympathy began to fade. Enemies increased, and eventually the destruction that had befallen other Witcher schools reached the School of the Griffin as well. When the fortress was destroyed, or rather left in ruins, its Witchers vanished. Some made their way to Kaer Morhen. The most famous among them, Cohen. Yes, many people think Cohen was from the School of the Wolf, but in truth he was a Griffin Witcher. Now, let's talk about their training. As I've mentioned many times, the School of the Griffin focused on magic-based training and raised their students accordingly. To them, facing a monster didn't begin when you were standing before it. It started long before with knowledge, and knowledge lived in books. To be recognized as a true Witcher of the school and to be allowed out into the world, candidates had to pass 2 major trials. The first was to steal a Griffin egg, a task far from easy. The second, to memorize the Book of Shadows word for word. As you can guess, no Witcher ever picked the second option. Griffin Witcher gear was medium weight and enhanced the strength of their signs. I know I've been saying magic all day when I should be saying signs, but the Griffin Witchers didn't use signs the way others did. Their signs were practically magic. When they cast Ard, faces would get rearranged. When they unleashed Igni, flames would consume entire villages. One Axii from them could turn the whole map red. These guys were absolute maniacs. Still, they were Witchers, and like the others, they didn't have a happy ending. Let's leave it at that and wrap up the video here. I'll be covering the stories of Erland of Larvik and run the others in detail eventually. Don't worry, they're all on my list. As long as you keep watching and supporting, this old Witcher will be right here. Alright, let's wrap this up and move on to our next adventures. See you in the next videos. Take care.